so we can get all spoilery about the
Woohoo!
third major Disney Plus Marvel Universe release show, Loki. We can
Mhm.
say Loki season 1,
Yes.
specifically. So, obviously, so
Spoiler.
before we
Spoiler, spoiler, spoiler!
yeah, before we did, 1 through 3, episodes 1 through 3, we have 4 through 6 now, but also this will be our, obviously, overall, thoughts as well. So, Loki, episode 4. Chris, what'd you think?
Yeah, so episode 4, we start off with the um, temporary, I suppose, salvation of Loki and Sylvie on Lamentus. The door opens up from the TVA, and they get to return. That was the first question I had about the episode. Is so I don't think it ever shows us that Mobius is responsible for this, but I kind of get the sense that he's probably the one that opened up these doors for them so they could return because he had asked his superior if he would be able to access individuals to gain more information, try to figure out where they might be hiding, etc. And so I'm kind of curious who is responsible for bringing them back, and why, if this was a Nexus event that was going to cause a massive branch, why didn't they just let them die? If they knew that it was they couldn't survive without being saved, that was a question that popped in my head. But yeah, I liked it. I think that I'm trying to come up with a better phrase, but I liked episode 4 probably the best out of the last 3, only because it was the one that I felt like it didn't start to lose the thread. And I don't mean that the story was impossible to follow, but it's just that's I think when in the middle of episode 5, it kind of hit critical mass for me with the number of unanswered questions. And I thought number 4 was the easiest for me to kind of wrap my mind around what was going on and what kind of questions they were trying to answer. And so, yeah, I out of this next set of 3 episodes, I really like this one a lot. It was fun to see that dynamic. It was fun to see Loki's influence on Mobius, obviously, convincing him that this was just a ploy that they needed to dig in more deeply with. And except for one spoiler out of episode 6, which I'll save till later, it was the moment that gave me the most excitement watching them kind of turn on the TVA. So
Okay. Nice. How about you, Andrea?
Yeah, I really enjoyed episode 4. Um, both moving in a rewind to kind of check out how Sylvie had come to the TVA. It was, I think pretty disturbing and a really great glimpse into her motivations, because there's something funny, I think, in the first episode where we see Loki get taken by the TVA and he goes through all of these things, like, they strip him down, they put him in the TVA jumpsuit, they, make him go through all of these things, they make him wait in line to be judged. He's got to walk through that detector that's like, hey, if you're a robot, you might die. Like, it's
Yeah.
all kind of like funny and like, like
Right.
what's going on? And then you see like just this tiny young child go through all of that, and it's like suddenly less funny.
well,
It's
and we still don't have an answer for what she did.
no,
To
no, we don't know like her like thing.
this event.
Right. Right. So yeah, so there's just something like less funny about it happening to a child, and you sort of like get like why she's so traumatized and so needs to bring down the TVA. So I thought it was like a really good episode for, exploring her motivations, exploring why she's so singularly focused. And it really builds, I think, for the audience, um, her motivations going into the last 2 episodes and why she's sort of like so blinded and so narrowly focused on like figuring all of this out and figuring out how to destroy the TVA, and unfortunately spoilers, why she and Loki, our version of Loki, Tom Hiddleston's Loki, you know, turn on each other a little bit because they disagree, because she's so just like, this is my goal, I have to achieve my goal, it's what I've been working for, as we see literally her entire life. So yeah, it's a great setup episode. I agree with Chris, it's definitely the easiest to follow in terms of plot, and in terms of like, it's more singular in a timeline. It's more linear storytelling, whereas like episodes 5 and 6 do kind of require you to like take a broader view of things and like sort of like wrap your head around some theories that aren't as easily digestible. So I think episode 4 was really well done, and a good kickoff to like kind of the back half of the season.
Mhm. Yeah, we I mean, and seeing Sylphie go through that, obviously we now have context of what's happening.
Mm-hmm.
When we first see Loki going through the process, we have no idea what's going on.
Right,
And there
right.
is like you say, an element of humor, and who knows, and then we kind of get brought into seriousness when someone gets zapped right away or whatever. But
Mhm.
that takes a moment, and then as we find out more about the TVA, so yeah, when we go back now and see it happen to another person, a child, understanding the what's actually going on now
Mhm.
certainly makes
And
it
we also get
makes her more understanding.
we also get a sense of how quickly, I think it sets up episode 5 and episode 6 for how quickly the storyline kind of unravels, because Sylvie has been determined to not only dodge the TVA but come to a conclusion of who controls this organization for 20 years at least. She's been on the run. If you go from the age of that young kid to the age of Sylvie as she's
No,
portrayed.
much longer.
Yeah.
Because with however they age, to my understanding, she said I was taken and like pruned before you were even born to
Yep.
Loki.
Oh, sure.
So
Sure. Okay.
much older.
Yeah.
Yep.
So yeah,
Oh,
And
yeah.
and remember, as Guardians, well, and
True.
and I guess our Loki isn't an Asgardian, but presumably, ages the same way. They talk about like we live 5,000 years in
Or even
Thor.
more significantly, just hundreds of years potentially that she's been trying to figure out, and this all just kind of comes to a head all within a couple of days' time, theoretically. So
Mm-hmm.
yep. I was happy with episode 4 because it was 3 that when we talked about on the show that I thought
Mm-hmm.
was kind of the weaker episode, where it
Yeah.
seemed okay, why is Loki being so he seems to not have any plan, he seems to be so reckless with this, and like it just didn't seem they weren't giving him, yes, he is a character, and yes, he makes mistakes, but it didn't seem like they were giving him his due credit.
Yep.
Like there were, he wasn't being treated as a um cognizant enough character. And I think
Mm-hmm.
that
right.
the rest of the series that turned around. So for
I agree.
whatever it was like that was needed as a plot device to get them to where it was like a hopeless state on this planet that's gonna,
Yeah.
whatever. I think that was probably my biggest issues with the show. But and then I like the question you asked there, Chris, because it's like yeah, why um with the why did they not just let them die?
Mm-hmm.
Was it just
Mhm.
too many questions because of like why did this all of a sudden create this major divergence? Like whatever you did, like they noticed it on their screen, and was it just like the curiosity, like what is happening right now? Let's
Mm-hmm.
go pick them up. Or was it like, no, you need to be brought in front of the timekeepers to answer for your crimes? Or was it like their leader there like not wanting, I don't know, wanting to see Sylvie and be ended herself?
Mm-hmm.
Because
Yeah, I think that had to have something to do with it, in addition to the fact that maybe it was curiosity about like what they've learned from this experience, because I and again, this is jumping ahead a little bit. I don't really know what Renslayer is, what her function is precisely. That where her motives fall at this point. Moving in at the end of season 1, but I think there
Yes.
had to be. I mean, the whole point of Sylvie hiding out in these apocalyptic events is that they never alerted the TVA, and so I wonder if they were even able to figure that out. I don't think we ever will figure out exactly how they located them in that moment. So
Well, because they created the event, the Nexus event, so it was going to end. You can't see the stuff that's going to happen but this was a change now. This
Yep.
was like all of a sudden timelines diverging or whatever, and so it was enough to show up on the radar.
Well,
Yeah, I don't know.
and don't we get from, and major spoilers now, I'm just gonna go all in for it. He Who Remains says in our later episodes, I've paved the road for you. You just walked down it. So don't we get sort of an idea at least that, this is part of a plan? Like there's something here that, them creating the Nexus event and being noticed by the TVA is part of a plan, because they have to get to this moment where like He Who Remains knows and sees all and knows what's going to happen. Right up until, episode 6 where he doesn't. So yeah. So he at least, so part of this has to be like part of a plan.
I have thoughts and questions. I'll save it for a little
Sure,
bit here.
sure.
We'll get back to that for sure. Let's see. So otherwise in 4, what's that?
Yeah, I was gonna say, let's ask the question that's on everybody's mind. What's Alligator Loki's backstory?
I know, right? I mean,
that's the real
that could
question.
Be a one-shot comic book. They could release a one-shot issue of that.
Yeah. I was honestly like this close to wearing like a green shirt.
Yeah.
And I've got like horn earrings on, and I was like, "Look, I'm a Loki," because apparently that's all you need. They were like,
"Yeah,
well, he is green and he has horns. He's a Loki."
Yeah.
And I was like, "Wow."
Yeah. I think we need to be creative. What's your backstory for Alligator Loki? Like, how do you think that evolved?
I think actually, so not to take this to like too serious a level, because I think it's just supposed to be funny, like Alligator Loki. But I do think it's funny that they didn't choose like one of the traditional shapes that Loki is said to shift into, like in Norse mythology. Like there's wolf Loki, there's horse Loki, there's snake Loki. I think there might be one more animal that he is purported to have changed into, but yeah, I just think it's funny that they chose like Alligator Loki, which is like nothing to do with Norse mythology.
Well, Alan shared this. Looks like some fans have already beat us to the punch for creating Alligator Loki's backstory.
Odin adopted the Alligator of Mischief.
I did see the frog variant as it was buried in the soil as they went down to the hideout.
Yeah.
Episode 5.
Yeah. 4, I guess, reminded me that I think they still need a better stunt choreographer. Like, I liked the look of everything, but when it came to fights and stuff, I still it lacked punch to me.
Yeah. Yeah. The one fight I did like was between Loki and Sylvie in the last one.
Yes. That was the best one. Yes.
It was the best one.
Yep. Yeah, episode 5. So while we're talking about Gator Loki,
Ooh, I don't want to totally leave episode 4 though, because I definitely have something to say about episode 4.
Sure.
Okay. So first of all, I have to, because this is one of my big complaints with the Thor movies. I have to say I loved seeing Sif Even if it was fake Sif in a time
Yep.
loop that the TVA created, I loved it because I'm still very salty about the treatment of Thor's companions in the Thor movies. Like they were all there and they were all present in the first one, and it was really fun to see everybody. And then in the second one, we sort of like shifted away and everybody was kind of only there for like a laugh and a joke and like to support like the main plot. And it was really like Thor, Jane, and Loki. So I sort of felt like everybody got the shaft in 2, but then they really, really, really got the shaft in Ragnarok.
They
Like
murdered everyone.
they did. They just like everybody died right away, and Sif wasn't even there. And I was really pissed about it. And I felt like they just like shunted everybody to the side just so that they could have Valkyrie and Hulk be Thor's new buddies in that movie.
Yeah.
And I'm really mad about it. Like, I'm not going to lie.
A 6-year grudge in the Stewart household.
Seriously. I loved the storylines that were going on with Thor's companions, and like they're such a big part of his mythology, and I just really felt like those characters got the shaft. So I was really excited to see Sif pop up in Loki.
I mean, I agree, because like there's definitely, and I've been part of it, like a sheen around what's his face now? I'm blanking on his name. Ragnarok director.
Oh, Taika
Um,
Waititi.
yeah. Whereas like can do no wrong sort of
Mhm.
thing. But it's a little unfair, and it makes me more concerned about his follow-up Thor, because I mean, it came out when you had Thor Ragnarok. It it was great because it instilled such a like kind of breath of fresh air from the
I
previous one.
agree.
The previous one that was less well received, and then to move to this, it's like, oh, this feels, it's tonally very different, and it just felt fresh and exciting. But I don't know how much Taika Waititi cares about stuff other than making a like fresh, entertaining, kind of goofy show. And so
Mhm.
yeah, that definitely will come at the expense of like um any sort of comic book lore,
Mhm.
sticking to that. And then yeah, these other characters, these companions that, yeah, basically after the first one. And I think Thor is a character that needs companions.
Mhm.
Thor is a character that works well when there's a team. It's like one
Yes.
of the heroes that's not all that exciting, honestly. It's the other things around him that make it exciting. He needs to be there. And it's
Mhm.
kind of like it's kind of like Batman. A lot of people, yes, I love Batman, but Batman wouldn't be the caliber he is without his rogues gallery, without
Right.
all the very well known, very different collection of villains that he must face off against. And
Mhm.
Thor is that way too. He needs that. And so having some other heroes at his side to like have some fun with and stuff,
Right.
yeah, it's lacking.
Right. He's social. He's like a social character. And it worked in Thor Ragnarok for him to be like, on this planet, and he's like befriending the other like quote unquote gladiators who are being in like these
Yep.
battles and arenas, and it was new and it was funny, like you said, like it's a breath of fresh air. But I don't think you can just lean on that in every movie. You
Mm.
need the like actual companions of Thor to make it feel meaningful, to make it feel like we've been in battles together. We have this like camaraderie, we have this like, ease between us. We have the chemistry. And that's what I really felt these other characters had, like Sif and Fandral, like they had with Thor, and they brought to the first movie, and then that was missing from the second because they were only on screen for like 2 seconds, and then completely gone from the third, which again I would excuse because like one movie, sure, new characters, fun, fine, but now we're going back to another movie. Thor Love and Thunder is coming out. I don't know that I'm as willing to accept, like, again, if we're having new companions, I'd rather have it be like more of, the traditional like comic book lore or mythology.
Well, and like you say, they were just like unceremoniously
They were
dispatched, just like
just
gone,
done. Yeah.
So, and I know that's to like drill home the threat, of
Right.
Hera,
But
but
it felt a little unceremonious because it was so easy. It was so just
mhm,
like they're gone now. Like one scene and boom, like
yep,
Volstagg and Fandral and like I said, Sif wasn't even there. She just wasn't even present. Like we don't even
yep.
know. It wasn't even addressed. So
And
yeah.
lots of other people lived, so like, why couldn't have they been and like helping escort people to
Hmm.
safety and like the
Right.
last line they could have made it longer in the movie, but
Yeah.
anyways,
So
that's a
yeah, so not to
different property, but
take
yeah,
yeah, not to take us on too much of a detour, but I really was excited to see Sif, even like I said, if it was just for like this moment, just because I was really excited to like bring that part of the mythology
yep,
back. I hope that's something moving forward. Um,
yep,
and then obviously I think we need to talk about in episode 4 the fact that spoiler, Mobius dies or not.
yeah,
Like that was
yeah,
huge. That was so huge in episode 4
yeah, that was
that
sad.
yeah, that his quote unquote good buddy, his friend Renslayer just like is like sorry, but you're going to be deleted
Mhm.
now. Like that was
Yep.
huge. I was so crushed. I was like, "Owen Wilson, Mobius."
Yep. I just wrote "son of a bitch" in my
Yeah.
comments. That was what happened there.
I said
So,
I hope he's riding that big jet ski in the sky.
yeah.
I was so obsessed with jet skis.
I had violent flashbacks to Infinity War. when when the every character we care about just like disappears into ash. So
Mm, yep.
Yeah.
Well, I did think then when we got Loki being pruned at the end, I'm like, okay,
Mhm.
either they're making a very big mistake here and they're
Right.
forcing us to shift to a different Loki
Right.
to care about, or he's not dead. So,
Right. Right.
Mhm.
But I mean, when Mobius is pruned, like we
right.
definitely felt
At that
like
moment, you're
that was
like, oh,
real.
yep.
So yeah,
We
so
should have known
I
better. Lies and lies.
lies upon lies upon lies. Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, four really had some big things happening. I mean, Mobius is pruned. We felt that betrayal. Because especially because he felt like Loki was telling him the truth, and he was like,
Yep.
I really want to go back to wherever I came from. Um, and then we had the forcible taking to the timekeepers, who turned out to be androids.
Yep.
Like I thought that they weren't real. I wasn't sure that they were alive, and then it seemed like they were. And then we find out like almost immediately afterwards through this carefully choreographed fight scene, which again was awkward but served its purpose in showing us that the timekeepers were just like robots. Like 4 had a lot going on.
Yep. Yep. Absolutely. No, I really liked that set where they had the timekeeper.
Yes.
It's a
Mhm.
nice imposing thing, keep people at a distance. It really is the Wizard of Oz. Like it's
They
definitely
look
the
It
they look pretty fakey. I was thinking like something's not right about this.
it honestly, you know what it reminded me of? It reminded me of Shazam. Like
oh,
that
sure.
hall that they come
Yeah.
to at the end, it honestly reminded me of Shazam, like,
Hmm.
It
in
reminded me of the
in a
scene in
good
Star
way.
Wars when they killed Snoke, and you're like, well, that was easy. When Kylo
Mm,
Ren
Oh,
and
yeah.
yeah,
No,
yeah,
yeah, sorry, I'm talking literally just the set reminded
sure,
me of
sure, sure,
Shazam.
sure.
But yes, I agree. Like, when they got to the timekeeper and they, like, cut off its head, and it was like, "Boy, that was easy." Like
yep. No, I enjoyed the episode a lot. Anything else on 4 before we move on to 5?
um I don't think so. Although I did just sort of like quickly note that, I think another key point for Sylvie's character was brought up in this episode, where they keep talking about how she's lived her life, and we see it in this episode from being a young child,
Mm-hmm.
basically living in the shadow of apocalypses for how many hundreds of years. And like, what would that do to your psyche? And I think that's a really big point again for Sylvie's character, like growing up in worlds that are about to be ended, and like just knowing that you're in some place that's going to be destroyed, and that's all you know. Like, you know nothing of stability, you know nothing of permanency. So I think that's a really important point for Sylvie's character, and again speaks to like what her choices are in the next 2 episodes.
Sure. Did we buy at all for a second that what's her face was gonna help, that Renslayer or whatever was gonna help Sylvie
Mobius
here?
or Sylvie? Oh yeah, no.
Yeah.
No.
It's
No.
She
That was
clearly has a lot of. I don't think that she has any like particular alliances with the higher authority here, but like she clearly has personal motivations that are far more important to her than
She's
any other guy.
confusing to me.
Yes,
Yeah,
Like,
I
I
agree.
I
agree.
don't understand what's going on there. So hopefully that gets
I can't
explained
decide.
and starts to make sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can't decide if she's trying to escape or if now that she learned that something's fishy, or if she's trying to seize power in some way. I can't decide which is
Yeah,
which.
that's like, do I want to just find whatever is in charge at the top because then I want to be the one that does that? Or is it, I don't know. She seems like she wants answers, but then when she gets clearly like, you know, brushed aside when she's asking
Mm.
for answers from their little AI,
Mhm.
I don't know. But I'm very confused. Like,
Yeah.
are the friendships legit or not? Like, she is willing to prune Mobius, but then because it's to protect you, are the traitor. We're protecting the sacred timeline here,
Mhm.
and you're the betrayer. But then I'm gonna go find who's in charge or whatever. I'm
Right.
gonna go
Right.
to the top. Like, I don't get it.
Yep.
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah, they don't have really great consistency with Renslayer.
Mhm.
And that's
I'm sure
very
there's a reason.
frustrating.
I'm sure there's a reason.
I hope
I'm
so.
I'm I hope so too. I mean, obviously we have now confirmed Loki season 2, so we can explore and hopefully get some sort of answers about this, because yeah, it does seem wildly inconsistent in season 1. Like,
Yep.
I want answers, and like, Mobius is like, "Oh, I know you're seeking answers, but you're not going to get them because you only want them. Sylvie needs them." So there's
Mhm.
clearly some sort of like drive to be like, "Well, what is this? What is the TVA?" But what is she going to do with that? Because she's still
Right.
like upholding the TVA even while she wants to
Exactly.
question it.
Yeah.
So, yeah, very confusing.
It's gonna find them and be like, "See, I'm your number one. Why don't you, give me a promotion or
Look how
something?"
smart I am. Yeah.
Yeah. Yep.
Look how smart I
Um, who's got speakers on?
Yeah. Who did that? I just heard my own echo.
um, so we get to see the the pruning garden, or the apocalyptic
Mhm.
wasteland with all
Avoid
the
it.
other.
Avoid it. Avoid it.
The
What do
void,
we
purgatory.
yeah,
Yeah.
what do we think of all those? I enjoyed some of the Lokis, I guess. Kind of
Hmm.
cool.
Yeah. Yeah. It was fun to see like how many different versions of Loki. I love how they explain that there are so many Lokis in there, because Loki's above all else like a survivor. So they
Mhm.
sort of like set up like this, like, this is the reason why there are so many Lokis here, because they keep like,
Yeah.
you know,
Warring
dodging.
factions.
Yeah. Yeah, they keep dodging like the ultimate punishment and because they're so good at surviving. So that was kind of fun. Um, and then, like the betrayal upon betrayal upon betrayal, because that's just Loki. It was just like, oh, this makes so much
Yep.
sense. It's great. Um, although when they did start battling with each other, I did note it's like a bad video game.
Yeah.
That was a really terrible scene.
And see, again, it's one of those things that it sort of demeans the character a little bit.
It
Yeah.
You
does.
know, it's some of that stuff. Like though I enjoy it and it's over fast enough, it's a little bit like, I mean, you got to balance that your character is uh like basically a god, or your character's a joke,
Yeah.
you know. And so it kind of goes back and forth, and then we see in this episode, like, clearly old man Loki uh is not a joke, you know.
Right.
His outfit's kind of silly, but like these guys
A
have
ton of
abilities and stuff. And
You're
yeah, I don't know.
talking Richard E. Grant's
Yeah.
Loki, classic Loki.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yep.
Yeah, I loved I loved that part of the episode. Um just seeing Richard Grant's Loki, his classic Loki, and getting back to a lot of like Loki's magic in this episode,
Mhm.
because I feel like the Tom Hiddleston Loki, and not maybe through any choices of his, but choices of directors more likely, have focused more on like the Loki that does stuff with his daggers and does stuff with swords and weapons and things like that. And early Loki, if you look at like the first Thor movie, even the second Thor movie, is really focused on his magic. And I felt like
Mhm.
we strayed a lot away from that. And I love that this episode kind of like brought us back to like, Loki is a powerful magician. Like, he
Yeah.
can do some really cool shit. Like, let's go back to that. And it's so
Yep.
important because the magic is tied in this version of Loki, to his mom and to his bond with Frigga, and she's the one who taught him all of this magic. So it's so important to him, and because his mom is so important to him, and she's like the kind of the only character that he has really cared about for so long. So yeah, let's get to this like prowess with magic.
Yeah. I like the line that they say, I think we're maybe more powerful than we know,
Mm-hmm.
or whatever.
Yeah.
Um
And I
Other things
mentioned that in
I
our previous. Yeah, I mentioned that in our previous episode. Like, was Loki going to learn how to use his power in a different way? And
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
while we really didn't see extensively uh, that, like, I think that is something that will come in season 2, that he'll begin to exercise his power in some significant way. Although lots of questions to be answered before we know what
Yep.
that's going to look like.
One of my favorite things about the season, other than the philosophical questions, is the relationship between Loki and
Mm-hmm.
Sylvie, and I really connect with their moments together, and like
Mm-hmm.
particularly in episode 5 here, when they're having their kind of cute little thing with sharing the blanket and stuff. Like, I really like that stuff, and I think that those two work well together. I like the
Mm-hmm.
dynamic between the characters, a sort of like standoffish thing, but like growing to try to trust one another.
Yeah.
And it's definitely one of those things, like, it's setting you up for, disappointment, but
Mm-hmm.
it's like, I want to see this work. Not only is it so incredibly fitting for Loki to like fall in love with himself,
Totally.
but it's just really,
Metaphor.
I think, well done with these two. Like, I could
Mm-hmm.
see it in their faces and I buy it.
Mm-hmm.
So I like those moments. Um,
Yeah, I
I
agree. I think it's very well acted, between the two of them, and I think it sets us up for, like you said, like just this like ultimate disappointment
Mhm.
in the later episode.
Yep. I guess my issue with episode 5, it would be that we start jumping to like conclude. I guess I understand, but I'm like, okay, well, you're gonna go and try to enchant this creature. How does that guarantee you that you're going to be able to get
Yeah.
anywhere from doing that?
Mm-hmm.
The only thing
Sure.
I can get is that she kind of saw some stuff when it like reached her. So
Mm-hmm.
she
Yeah,
saw a
she
place
got a
and she
glimpse
kind
of
of,
something.
yep. So I think that's what we're supposed to latch on to is like, okay, we can believe that she's confident what she's saying here
Right.
because she kind of sensed and felt something through that. Because otherwise, it's like, what does this? How do you know this is going to do anything for you?
Right. It's a little quick though. It's a little like jumpy.
Hmm.
You know, it's I wish they would have like done something to show us that that was more logical. Do you know what I mean? Like it was just so brief that it was like,
Yep.
okay, I'm taking this on faith here and I believe that this can happen, but it was just like a little like, wow, that's really brief to like base this entire plot point on.
Mhm.
Yep. Do you guys think that the other Lokis would all just like, yeah, we'll stay here?
Um kind of, yeah. I
Yeah,
mean,
it's unclear to me like what they're clearly so petrified of the Eliath creature that they're not
mhm,
even willing to consider the possibility of engaging or interacting with them. So they've basically just been on the run for their entire existence as long as they've been in the void. Um, and like is we don't really see anyone that isn't a Loki outside of the characters we already know, like Mobius.
Yep.
So like, is the void really just a place where it's an automatic death sentence for the vast majority of variants that are pruned? Like the TVA has been pruning people for thousands of years, and the only 20 people that we see are all Lokis. It's kind of strange
yeah.
that he's the only one that's been able to survive um, that entire time period, and that this creature that he who remains has managed to tame or whatever
Mhm.
Yeah.
has only been able to not kill Lokis.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, I guess they sort of, they explain away like we send stuff to the void and whatever happens in the void, we don't really care.
Yeah.
Like that's just, it's forgotten about. So, but
Yeah.
yeah. Well, they did talk about like, I don't know if they were also Lokis, but they did talk about like cannibals and other people, other
Mhm.
people coming. If they see a car, it's usually whatever. So,
Right.
you know,
Yeah, I think the couple Lokis made sense to me, um like Alligator Loki, like where was he gonna go? What was he gonna do? You know what I mean?
well, does
Like,
he want to live in a pool his whole life?
I mean,
Like a kiddie pool?
who knows?
Got to
You
see
know,
the ocean.
he didn't really
He'll
seem
get
to have
bigger
like a whole
eventually.
lot. He didn't seem to have like a whole lot going on, or like a whole lot of ambition other than
He
like,
was the first
I'm not
one
gonna
to
lie.
launch the offensive.
I'm not gonna lie, I love that like Captain hooking of other
Yeah,
Yeah.
Loki's hand. That was hilarious. But he didn't even seem to have a whole lot of ambition going on. So like maybe he's comfortable, maybe he's cool, just like drinking boxed wine in his little kiddie pool all day. Um and then like Kid Loki who defeated Thor, like he's the unofficial king, so
Mhm.
he was like cool with staying, I think. And then like old Loki, all he was looking for was companionship and he found it. So like those very limited set of characters, yes, I believe that they're like cool with staying. If you expanded it to more Lokis, no, I would not have believed that they all wanted to stay.
it's kind of a weirdly perfect place for Loki to exist. Only himself to conquer and nothing
Mhm.
really to rule. But
Yeah.
Huh. Okay. I love the visuals in this again.
Mhm.
I think that this is of all the Marvel shows so far, this is the best shot. This one has the
Yes.
best eye behind the lens in general, and color grading, and just like it just looks good. And so then when the monster's coming for him, and
Yeah.
then the Richard Loki is like building the city,
That
you
was
know, behind them.
amazing.
That
That
was
was
really
cool.
so
cool.
cool. Oh, I loved it.
Let's find some wide angles on the actors, says Alan. Yeah, they just there's a better eye behind this show than the other
Yes.
ones. So
Yes. It was this episode in particular was just, I mean, they've all been wonderfully shot, but this one really, I felt like, was just excellence all the way.
some epic moments, and yeah.
I do have to say, like, speaking of the moment where they're facing off against Eliath, Loki waving his flaming sword, I totally had flashbacks.
Oh, me
Legit or not,
too.
you tell me.
Jurassic Park.
To
Jurassic Park.
Jurassic Park.
Yeah, for sure. It had to
Yeah.
be.
It
Yeah.
was totally
No, that
Ian
too.
Malcolm, like, waving the flare. It was just like,
Yep.
I don't know if that's very specific and like only people of our
Ian, don't
generation
move.
like.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
that's exactly what I thought of in that moment, and I was just like, "Oh my god, what are you doing, Loki?"
Yep. Yep. Helen says Sam Neill's going to be in Thor: Love and Thunder. Okay, I mean we're getting those connections in here.
Seriously?
It's,
That's excellent. I love that, cuz like wasn't he Dr. Odin in Ragnarok? Wasn't he in that like play within the play that like in the beginning of
Oh, was
Thor
he?
Ragnarok, when it's like the tragedy of Loki
interesting.
fun.
and Matt Damon is playing Loki, and I think Sam Neill was
Oh,
playing
that
like
sounds right,
Odin.
actually, yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
I'm pretty sure.
So I wonder if that's
Yes. Alan says yes. I love it. It was so great. I
well,
totally
hopefully
remember
that's not the
Sam
limit of
Neill.
his role in the next one. Maybe
Yeah,
it will just be
hopefully
another
it's
little cameo thing too.
yeah, hopefully it's more substantial. But I just remember Sam Neill like talking about like this little blue baby melted this old man's heart.
Yeah, that's funny. Okay. You talked about some of that stuff already. Might as well get to the big stuff, right?
Yeah, let's
Episode
get into
6, the
it.
finale.
The
You know, so they're escaping, and they defeat the enchant, the monster, Elias
Mhm.
there, or Eliath, whatever, and get to this. We're given this kind of crazy warping, sort of going through, hearing voices, going through the cosmos
Mhm.
kind of thing.
Yeah.
And we emerge at some sort of castle,
Mhm.
which looked cool again.
Mhm.
Lonely but cool. So I mean, we have a sassy little clock given our protagonists a choice here.
Ultimatums. Yeah.
Yep.
Mhm.
Hmm. And it's refused. And we get to meet the one that remains, one who
Mhm.
remains. What do we think of him? What do we think of this finale here? This what's like the answers we got, were they satisfying, and were we given too many questions in return, or whoever
Chris,
has the most
I'm going to
dominant
put this
thoughts
to
here, go
you.
first.
Yeah, I'm going to put
Okay.
this to you, Chris.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have to have read the comics very deeply to understand that this character is clearly Kang, who is this multi-universe villain. So like he's clearly going to be the versions of himself are going to be like that's who the statue was at the very end. It has to be. I read that the actor who played was it Jonathan something. He's already been cast as Kang in the next Ant-Man film. So it's obvious who this guy is, that he's Kang the Conqueror. And so and we were just dealing with like one version of him. I guess I have a really complex question and a really
Mm.
straightforward question.
Sure.
Jonathan Majors, yeah, thank you, Alan. So I guess my really complex question is, how is time really structured here? So like we saw the Citadel at the center of this this time circle, and we watched the branches kind of emerge. So exactly how is this kind of this timeline structured? So when they walked to the Citadel, my first thought when I was watching it was, why are all these statues broken? Like, why does this castle look like it's in disrepair if it's just this one guy hanging out there? And I didn't understand why it was so dark and dingy, and why. And so I think my sense is, I don't know when they entered the this Citadel. I don't know where on the timeline they are. If he already knew that these things were going to happen, but then there was an end point, you would think that the timeline is in a straight line. But like, what other interactions have occurred at the Citadel where there's these broken statues and broken pillars? And I'm just kind of confused exactly what the Citadel represents. So that was my first big question I had when they entered.
Mm-hmm.
Well, okay, so as opposed to time running in a straight line, as you're saying, it would seem to imply if you're going to the end, what's your
Mm-hmm.
alternative? Now, I mean, I understand that the phrase time is cyclical, and he
Yeah.
seems to suggest that.
Mhm.
Because we're dealing, I think the complication is we're not just dealing with time and time travel, we're dealing with multiple universes.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
And so if multiple universes can exist, and then you can go to any point in time at any universe, I mean, I don't know, it complicates things.
Well, and
Um,
he shows time when he's like explaining
loop.
his past to Sylvie and Loki. He shows it in a loop, and he shows
Mhm.
like these multiple rings on top of each other to like signify like these different universes existing. So I think it's really interesting that, like you said, it's something to work out with time, because they talk about the end of time, this, like Sylvie and Loki are trying to get to the end of time, what's beyond the end of time,
Yeah.
which would like imply that time is linear and a line. But then when they get to the end of time, he who remains shows them, or Kang the Conqueror, however you want to term him, shows them like this time loop, you
Mhm.
know.
well,
And
because
So
even
so what is
what does
time
the
then?
threshold? What does the threshold represent? Because he referenced that, like, that was the moment they crossed where he doesn't know what happens.
Right,
Like,
right.
what is
So
the
is it in the
threshold?
loop
If it's a
again?
circle, yeah, right, yeah. It was confusing to me. I was trying to visualize it.
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, it obviously, if this is the end of time, end of written time, then, or known time, that's only for one universe,
Mhm.
right? So theoretically there's a different occurrence like this or whatever in another multiverse, but that, I guess that doesn't make sense then, because this one has to be controlling all the other timelines, right?
Mhm.
Mhm.
So I mean, are we in it? Because are we in a situation where they're managing the timelines of multiple different universes, or are they
Mhm.
literally just pruning out the creation of new universes
Right.
by
Right.
divergence from the timeline?
Right.
With,
Yeah.
I don't know, because that would imply then that you could go to another universe, but it must be that the sacred timeline keeps all of the multiverses
In
on
line.
track, on
Yeah.
their own track.
Separate.
But is this then somehow a point that is ruling, like, where is this in time, in space time? you
Right.
know is this
Mhm.
in its own universe? I mean, or because again, otherwise this would be occurring at the end of time in every universe.
Right.
And then he would have no authority basically over all the multiverses, which clearly he and the TVA do.
Right.
So
And
how
I,
does this sit
and I think
outside of time?
yeah, and I think it's clear that there's a TVA in each universe controlled by different groups because, which is another question I have, but I'll double back to that later. When Loki appears at the end of the episode and Mobius and B-15 don't recognize him, clearly that's another universe. So Sylvie has managed to push Loki into another universe. And so, first of all, how does she figure out how to do that? But also, clearly
Or is it intentional?
Right.
yeah, there's
That's what I was
clearly
thinking.
there's clearly a critical mass moment in each of these universes. But is that the threshold in every universe, or is this? Yeah, is there a central timeline? It's hard to understand exactly what they're implying here.
Because yeah, that's a great point, because with a separate TVA in a different universe, how would there be any order maintained with it amongst the universes?
Right.
Between them, yeah. So clearly this one he who remains, clearly he's the most powerful. He beat back his opponents. But like, what does that mean? How does he keep them in line, and what authority does he have over this different universe that has clearly kind of spelled out differently?
Yeah. So like, is he in a timeline that is like desolate and completed, and it's at the end of that in that universe? That's basically the
Right.
far out point. And then he can create his androids to act as puppet heads
Yeah.
in all the different universes.
Or is he a convergence of all three different layers of the different universes, and he is the one at the end? Now that he doesn't exist anymore, there is no central authority. So now it's going to be a fight for a new central authority.
Well, and that just so that, and the other thing that adds like a unbelievability to this is that um normally when you think of a multiverse, you think of infinite universes. Like that's
Yeah.
the presumption. So it's like, okay, this must be a finite amount, because otherwise it would be like completely unmanageable. There has to be a known number of involved universes.
Right.
And then you try to stop new ones from existing, basically, as you diverge on the things would diverge on the timeline. But that leads me to like, okay, so I can understand how he could know what's going to happen, because essentially, if you're able to travel to these different universes at different points in space time, you can see everything that's going to happen, and you could like know, because you can go to any point in time.
Right.
But how can you observe that? That's what I want to know. Like, I don't see a mystical orb there, magical ball, where he's like looking into it and can see everything that is happening, and like rewind and jump between universes to know. Like, how does he have, like, yeah, Alan's showing it right now. How does he have the script
Right.
of what's being said? And like, is that his only way? Like, the
It's so
mechanic
old
of that.
school. It's such like a weird technology. Like it doesn't seem like a newer technology. You know what I mean? Like it's so like, yeah, this is a printout transcript that gets printed out. Like it's not technologically advanced enough for us to believe that like it's a tool that lets him know what's going on in other universes, this universe, like the whole of time up to this point. Do you know what I mean? Like the technology is so backwards.
You couldn't possibly like, oh, I have it right here. What's, gonna, it's like, it's literally not possible to store the amount of information that is required to know of what is happening at all points in time in all of existence on paper.
Yes.
Like you need some sort of digital catalog, which maybe exists, and he printed these up for the special occasion. he's like, I gotta go to this other other universe to get toner for my damn printer that doesn't make anymore, and over
God,
here,
the
and
cyan on my printer is out again.
yeah.
I think if you can warp himself around the room, I think you can probably fabricate printing ink.
Yeah. Yeah, I liked his I liked the story. I liked the setup. I appreciated the explainer that he gave us, and I was pretty satisfied with how that went down. Okay,
Yeah.
I'm this guy in the 31st century. I discover that there are multiple universes stacked on top of one another. I am
Mhm.
able to figure out a way to traverse between them. At the same time, obviously, in these different universes, me in those universes are also figuring this out. So we're
Mhm.
meeting and discussing, and like it's pretty good for a while. And
Fighting.
eventually, this travel, like, I don't know, opens up or something. And so,
Mhm.
as opposed to a world war, now we have wars between realities.
Right.
And oh my God, isn't this a mess? And I'm going to be the one to end the rest of you and like quell this chaos.
Mhm.
So I like
Well,
that setup.
so is this ultimately a story about like is season 2 going to be about the rise of authoritarian, like heavy-handed iron fist rule, or what is the next He Who Remains going to look like? Because clearly that's where we're headed. Like this is going to be
Yeah.
a larger battle of Loki in a one universe versus the universe we're familiar with. There's going to be some sort of conflict that occurs now that the higher authority is dead.
But this is so tough because when you do this, all points in time exist all the time.
Mhm.
So like you can have whatever struggle you're having right now with the multiverses and the chaos going on, but you could still always go to the end point and be the same situation. It
Mhm.
still is there in space time in that universe. Like
Yep.
it gets I love time stuff, like Doctor Who, stuff, but it does
Mhm.
get really messy, especially again when we're not dealing with just time travel. We're dealing with multiple universes. As a whole nother layer of complication. And I mean, do you think they can explain um how this is and how it makes sense in season 2, or are we going to be is it going to be a, well, you just have to take our word for it?
Mhm.
Yeah,
That's
I expect
that's
I expect the latter.
you just have to take our word for it.
Yeah, I think it's going to be. I think they did what they're going to do to really explain what's going on. They might explain how different worlds are different, but I have a hard time imagining that they're going to really invest time in a miniseries trying to explain like because I think I mean again I don't know this from firsthand experience, but I do know that in the comic series like the multiverse is explored significantly, and I have a
Mhm.
hard time. I have a hard time thinking they're going to spend a lot of time trying to explain it because there's just too many storylines to chase after.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
that's why, like, you know, it's what was happening with WandaVision, what we expect to happen in Doctor Strange and the Multiverse
Mhm.
of Madness. I think it makes sense because you're gonna have like it's a chaos that's unexplained. Like you can have a thing where you're tearing holes in reality, and like I feel like it doesn't need to be explained if something weird happens. But when you're going to set the goal for yourself to have an organization that literally controls all of this,
Mhm.
and now you're going to explore that all of a sudden you've put the burden on yourself to explain it, and that's
Mhm.
really really tough to do.
Yep.
um I don't know. I mean, and it's also uh, it ruins some of the mystery.
Mhm.
If you have a multiversal thing that you can harness because you don't really understand it, that kind of leaves that, it's sort of like, I don't know, if you really did meet God and then know all the answers, it's like, well, I guess that's that. You know,
Right.
that's where it is. There it is. Okay, no more questions.
Right.
And it would be very weird for a person. You get a little bit of that here, you know?
I'm
Yeah.
really curious how Sylvia was able to open up a network through the 10 pad to another multi universe. It's kind of interesting
Yeah,
to see.
I
I
think at least that's something they're gonna have to explain in season 2. You know what I
I feel
mean?
like it was yeah,
I
I feel like it was an accident because they were at whatever this converging point
Mhm.
of the
Interesting.
timelines and universes
Sure,
is.
and whatever the explanation is, like, I'm willing to roll with it. I just think it's gonna be something they're at least gonna have to explain because they're gonna have to get Loki back to this other universe that, you know, we're in. Whatever universe it may be, main universe with the sacred timeline, like, one of the other universes, whatever it is. Um they're going to have to get him back there somehow because if they don't, like, we're not invested in the story. You
Right.
know what I
Right.
mean? So they're going to have to explain how to get him back there. So they're going to have to explain that in some sense.
I have to say, I loved this show, but it did. Whereas before, I was nothing but excited for like Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness. I'm
Yeah,
now worried. I'm now concerned about how this is gonna play out and how
Mhm.
it's gonna be explained. And to me, this show question like because earlier the talk was that the shows weren't going to be required viewing, so nothing too dramatic was going to happen in them. This
Right.
one, does it feel like
Just
maybe
just
that's
stumbling
changing?
on another universe. No big deal. Just stumbling on another universe.
Yeah. I mean, it will be kind of disappointing if like season 2 or however many seasons they do of this, it's all sort of buttoned up and then it had no impact. That would be kind of disappointing.
I agree.
Um, but
Well,
you know,
and I think the thing that we need to remember is we don't even know what's going on in the timeline that Loki left. Like we're kind of thinking of like the
yeah,
TVA sequence as like on the timeline, but that's kind of like
But is it? Yeah.
yeah, what space precisely is the TVA existing? Because it's not in the real world. And so, like
right.
right now in time, we're still kind of frozen in the Loki steals the cube moment in time. So, what like
Right,
theoretically, nothing actually will change if everything is resolved by the end of season 2.
but
But then, what's the sequence? Does Loki still die in the MCU? So,
that's what I'm saying. Like we're still tied into canon MCU because everything that He Who Remains offers him is tied to events in our understanding of the MCU. He's like, "Oh, do you want to win New York? Or do you want to win against Thanos? Like, do you not want to die?" Like, everything is still tied to what we know happens in the other Marvel movies.
Yeah.
So it's not totally branched off. So there's some sort of still connection to the events that we understand them as happening in a linear progression in the
sure.
MCU as we've seen it.
Yeah.
Mhm.
My only thought is that they could do 5 seasons of Loki and it could wind up
Sure.
ending and the cube incident is resolved and everything just continues on the way that it was.
I agree, but for now, like, we at least like understand what universe we're in mainly and what
Yeah.
universe like Loki will be trying to get back to. Cuz obviously him going to a different universe opens up like multiple different possibilities for like what happens to the other, characters in the MCU and to Loki.
I think, maybe, who knows, but I think that he'll get pulled back into the main timeline that we're familiar with
Mhm.
in Doctor Strange because
Mm.
then if you're only watching the movies, then he dies And then now we have Doctor Strange and Wanda doing crazy stuff with the multiverse and dimensions and
Mm-hmm.
stuff that he gets popped back through from doesn't matter where. Now we have
Mm-hmm.
Loki back. And
Sure.
so
Yeah.
we'll
And
have
that's what we
known
have
if
for
you watch
season
the
2.
show that there's all kinds of stuff going on that he went through, but to the moviegoers, that won't have mattered.
Do we
That would
know?
be my guess right now.
Do we know if he's in Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness?
No, and I would hope they would keep it a secret
Oh.
Yeah.
he was.
I have
Spoiler.
things. I have things.
Spoiler.
I just looked up the cast, so I know some people who are in the cast.
Well, in fairness, too, we know that anyone can show up in any of these Marvel movies. It could
and
be
not
like
necessarily be
voiceover.
yeah,
Yeah,
totally.
it could be a thing from the flashback. It could be all kinds of things like that. So
Absolutely.
Who's in it?
What's
Do
that?
we want a
You gotta hear-
spoiler? Do we
gotta hear
want a spoiler?
spoilers.
No. Chris says, of course. John?
Oh, well, from your reaction, Loki's in
Yes.
the movie, or he's in the cast list.
Yes.
And no more.
Ooh.
Yep.
I
Nope.
still-
I won't. I mean, I don't know anymore. I just saw like the cast. Also, Bruce Campbell did pop up as in the cast. So
Interesting. Okay.
super excited about
That's
that.
cool. Huh. I mean, I'm okay with them seeing a timeline for a moment and he's like still fighting zombies with a chainsaw in his hand.
Absolutely.
Like,
Absolutely. I
make it
don't care if
happen.
it's like 5 seconds. Like I'm
Yeah.
cool with it.
Yeah, I don't know. Multiverse stuff is messy, and often it seems like people do multiverse stories so they can like write characters that they're tired of the character that they have or the place they have or the thing that they have. I want it to be different. So let's introduce a multiverse and mess it all up. Now I can have the character be the way I want to write him or have this piece and that, it's like a grab bag. And it's kind of a convenient thing, but it can get messy and
Yes.
it can be fun, but it can be abused. So like,
Yes.
I don't know. Ultimately, I really enjoyed the show but I still, when I'm done with it now, would rather this have not been a Marvel thing at all. No, I just still would rather it be its own thing, create your own lore and your own world, and we can really, because then you really do have that freedom. You're not beholden to anything.
Right.
And I think it can be equally as interesting. We have gotten very little like connect through thread to anything else in the Marvel universe. Like, yes, there's more impact to what's happening to Loki or whatever because we've experienced, we've gone on a journey with him previously in other movies, but that's kind of it,
Yeah.
And so, or this show like potentially has grand repercussions for the Marvel Cinematic Universe that hopefully is well thought out and considered. Because I just saw a thing now, it just came out. Kevin Feige did an interview. This was today. People are writing about it, where they just had a big meeting during an interview with D23 Inside Disney podcast. Feige said the multiverse is coming up in a big way. There's interconnectivity there that people have already started to see and suss out. And I had a meeting this morning with the whole board, or with the whole broad Marvel Studios team, going through the multiverse and the rules of the multiverse and exactly how to really deliver on the excitement surrounding the multiverse. So to me, it seems like this should have happened like 2 years ago. So hopefully the ducks are in a row, because Spider-Man is happening. That's well underway.
Yep.
Doctor Strange is well underway. And we obviously had this kickoff with things with WandaVision and now this show. So like, I hope they can hold it together.
God, I
is
hope
all I'm
so.
saying.
I hope this doesn't turn into like a DC
I know,
level
right? Use the multiverse to
mess.
explain whatever we want, do whatever we want. And if we mess up, we're just gonna like,
blame the
multiverse it
multiverse.
away.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That can't be an excuse for lazy story writing and lazy like plot points. You know what I mean? Like
Mm-hmm.
DC has already abused that so much that I get so nervous. Like even knowing the excellence that Marvel has shown us and I know is in like their writing teams, it's still like such a touchy thing for me right now, seeing how the DC universe has messed it all up.
And people get cocky,
They
like
do.
they have a decade of like largely honoring source material and creating these movies that were multi-million-dollar projects that like succeeded at the box office like no other, an incredible achievement. There's some hubris now.
Mhm.
It's like, we can do anything and we can't
Mhm.
fail. Like, and they start
And
getting a
you
little
so
more.
can.
You so can, yes. So I don't want Feige to bite off more than he can chew. I don't,
Mhm.
like if he's talking about working on Star Wars projects as well. Like I just,
Mhm.
focus and work on the craft and like blueprint a whole, new story arc here and not hopefully not wing it. So,
Right. Right. Oh
um,
boy.
what'd you guys like? I really liked I wasn't happy that Sylvie and Loki were fighting at the
Mhm.
end. But it obviously gave the audience the two philosophical points, sort of. And in
Mhm.
fairness, Loki was basically like, let's just talk about this for a second. But
Mhm.
basically we had well, be damned with it all sort of thing. And so they're not like strictly with the principle only. They also had their own motivations. Loki's
Right.
like, well, I am like falling for you and we need to make this work together. And she's like, my like vendetta, my entire thousands of years of existence has led to this. So like there's those elements as well. But it's also, we get the one who remains explaining like you can take over or it's gonna be chaos. Like, doesn't the
Mhm.
safety sound nice?
Mhm.
Um, and then we have the fights to determine which one that should be.
Mhm.
The chaos, I argue, inherent in life, or the
Mhm.
safety provided by an authoritarian.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think this is another moment in this show in which uh, I don't know. I was wrong a little bit the last time when I'm like, why is I think this is in episode 2 or 3 is like, why is Loki just like wasting his time getting hammered on this train with these random
Yeah.
random people leading to the apocalypse and I have a hard time um I have a hard time believing that there isn't some sort of broader idea concept here. Like I think he recognizes in the moment that Sylvie is not short-sighted, but clearly like motivated on her one goal, which is to like bring an end to the system that put her where she is. And I don't know. I just like I have more confidence in the character of Loki that we're familiar with. There's some sort of broader plan here, or that one will emerge quickly. I don't know if he has it formulated yet, but I don't know. Maybe I have too much confidence in his
I think
character.
so. Yeah, I think so.
Mhm.
I think the time for that, right, was there and past. I think it was
Sure.
again is showing a little bit of a disrespect for the character and like it was used as a vessel to get the plot where they wanted. Not necessarily as design as really a slight against the character, but that's what it ended up being. Um, how do we take this intelligent, competent, godlike being, incredibly powerful, basically impossible to kill character, and then make it so there's two of them now,
Mhm.
doubly smart, and they get trapped on a place you know, everything there is gonna be wiped out. And
Mhm.
yeah, it's a little like, yeah, it's
Yeah,
a little hard. It's a bit of a stretch.
the Loki we're familiar with is hopeless. Like every time he crafts the beginning of a plan, it falls apart quickly. So it's just like it's
Yep.
very strange that they're treating the character this way.
Yep. No, I hope there's a kind of a redemption arc almost in season 2 in that way. And I feel like, I mean, we've gotten genuine change from this Loki that I've appreciated. So
Mm-hmm.
those are the things that I do like, and I hope we don't see that disintegrate. And that will be the weird thing if
Mm-hmm.
we get that where he's pulled back into the mainline Marvel universe and all of a sudden he's different. And
Right.
again, it's one of those things like, okay, are we gonna? I mean, we're gonna fully embrace taking this villain that people are passionate about and make him not a villain anymore. Are we
Mm-hmm.
gonna redeem him and make him now an aspirational character?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
Well, they've already done that if you just watch Marvel movies.
I mean, he's had redemptive moments. I mean, and you can argue he's had his Vader redemption at the end.
Exactly. That's the point. I think that's what people remember the most,
Mhm.
Like now that like in Endgame, right? In beginning of
No,
Infinity
it's
War.
Infinity War. Yeah.
Infinity War. He stood up to Thanos. Like that was really like his defining moment now. Because of
Yep.
the original Avengers is just so long ago. I mean, you get it, like New York, but it's such like a distant touchstone for people. They sort of remember now more the redemptive arc of Loki, standing by Thor
Yep.
in Ragnarok and standing against Thanos in Infinity War.
I mean, if you're a fan of Loki, do you not go through this series and feel a little bit stung kind of all the way through?
Yeah.
It's sort of like, okay, so you get in here and you like, you're bombastic and you brag and then you can't do anything about it. And then we show you what happens to you and it's
Mm-hmm.
kind of sad and pathetic. And then they talk about the people that, I've killed people and whatever. And then it's like some of the people that just came back, you didn't accomplish anything. And then
Yeah.
he's again trying to do like kind of lame, half-hearted, I'm fooling you that I'm on your side, or when they're doing a little investigation and he tries to trick him, like she's right outside, whatever he is. And all this stuff, none of it works.
Yep.
He always comes off as looking shallow,
Less than.
pathetic, less than. He gets in a fight, he gets beat up, like
Yeah.
and I don't know that the character deserves it.
Mm-hmm.
And again, it's another, this would be better outside of Marvel. If this was not taking a historied Marvel character and telling the story you feel like telling with him,
Mm-hmm.
as much as I am enjoying it, So
Yeah, I agree. As someone who's been a fan of Loki from early on in the MCU, this series makes me frustrated for his character because he does always come off like on the losing end of things. Like he's silly, he's, not that good at lying to people, which is like supposed to be his thing. Like he's always losing these battles, like in these last 2 episodes, like everybody is like, oh, Sylvie seems more confident than you, like probably should go with her plan. Like, there's just so much that's like, can we just like take a moment and give Loki some credit here? Like he is a capable being, he doesn't always have to win at stuff, and he doesn't need to be some sort of like brilliant mastermind and like whatever, but he can be capable sometimes. And it sometimes seems like he loses too often.
he's been demoted from villain to comic relief.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. To punchline.
Yep.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yep.
And then
Yep.
that's driven home by seeing all the other Lokis and their like pathetic little battle.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
But then
Exactly.
then we see the amazing, awesome moments like where
Like
old guy
classic
Grant
Loki.
Loki, yeah, is
Mm-hmm.
so it's unbalanced.
Yes.
It is
Yep.
hard. It is hard for me to segregate though, like where we are in the timeline, in the standard, I guess, sacred timeline. A lot of the character development that we really enjoyed watching happening with Loki happened in the second Thor film and in Avengers and in or
Mhm.
Yeah,
in Ragnarok, and so it was kind of
that's character
interesting.
development though. Like I'm saying like capabilities. Like
Yeah, I'm just
Competence.
saying.
like
Yeah.
I'm just
competency, he's
saying.
already demonstrated. Like he was the main villain in Avengers. Like how
But
does he like
he
stop?
never accomplished anything outside of like one large battle at the end. Like he was smacked down by Thor um when he was trying to like capture those people, put them under his authority, and he just like the story of Loki in that film wasn't a success story. It was a story of like
Well,
petulance and
that's Hulk who like really threw him down at the end, and that's Captain
rebellion.
America. That's Captain America in Germany when he decides to like take down all those people, and
Yeah,
he holds his own against Captain America. I mean, I get that like Hulk is a different story.
Yep.
Because there's some like weird like you can't really measure Hulk.
sure.
Um, like he can't quite get up to Thanos, but he can get up to like everybody else. And like I'm not sure exactly where he lies in like the power balance of the MCU. But like Loki is demonstrated to be quite capable. And then suddenly like in the all the stories following Avengers, he's demonstrated to be less and less and less capable. And I feel like
Yeah.
this series
There
is
you go.
feeding into that narrative in like a not great way.
Yeah. I
Which
mean,
brings us back to John's point, which if this is not going to have an effect on the main timeline of Avengers, like what is all this character development for?
Yeah.
yep. Yeah. I don't know. I mean, because it will be weird if Loki all of a sudden comes back to the main timeline and he's completely different. But
Mhm.
then
Yeah,
this will feel really, really shallow if he's like,
right.
I've been hurt now too many times, and my Loki counterpart I thought I could trust betray me, and so I'm just back to being Loki again. Well,
Right.
then that's really meaningless.
Right. What's the point of that? Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like if he does pop back into the main timeline, they're going to pick a moment that makes sense that he kind of makes like a key decision, whether that is right before he dies or whatnot. Like I feel like they're going to have to pick a moment for him to pop back into whole
I was gonna
consistency.
say I feel like they reference that moment a lot, so perhaps that'll be the moment, you know,
Right.
that
And then
we
maybe that's the way that Loki survives.
yeah.
So I don't know.
Well, I will be disappointed if we don't get the meaningful Loki character development and then it doesn't stick.
Yep, I
I
Yeah.
will
agree.
definitely do. Well, without going into it for spoilers of Game of Thrones, I don't want a Jamie Lannister situation right now as Loki.
Agreed. Agreed so hard.
Oh, that was an unceremonious death for a guy that we invested a lot of emotional energy in.
Yes.
Yep.
That
And
yeah,
apparently
that's
he
the
learned
point.
nothing.
Yep,
Yep.
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah, I don't think it's too spoilery to say like I I mean George R. R. Martin is still working on, the book versions
Yep.
of events that have happened in the show Game of Thrones, and I really hope he's learned um
hmm
perhaps from some fan reactions how not to take that character.
Yeah. Yep. All the things they did is like, oh, I was gonna do that. Oh, they didn't like
Uh,
it. Oh,
Just
I
kidding.
have to
Yeah.
back to the drawing board.
I mean,
Yep.
I don't want to be one of those people who like advocates for like authors have to listen to fan
No.
reactions and like they're too constrained. But I really do believe in this circumstance that like a lot of people were
But you'd
very
feel it.
disappointed.
You'd feel that as a writer. You'd be like, well, look, I mean, maybe then they have a point here. Like, I need to
Exactly.
reconsider this
It's
because,
not like a small group of like disappointed, like,
yeah,
oh, I wanted it this way. It's like so many people.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we certainly can talk about some other things. But like for me, last thoughts anyway, as I was thinking,
Yeah.
is just the question to you guys: what would you do? Whose side did you take? You're given the offer by the one who remains.
Mm-hmm.
I am tired. I am exhausted from this. What I've
Mm-hmm.
set in place works. It keeps at the expense of many lives. It keeps a peace and it keeps a balance. Kill me and take my role, and the whole system is yours to manage and control and to keep back the forces of chaos. Or do you go along the lines of just end him and let it fall? What choice do you guys make?
Mm.
Boy, I mean, I'm not a believer that the answer is a person. I don't have a strong sense that that Loki or Sylvie or a combination of them would be able to manage this. I just don't. I don't know. I'm not sure I'm a chaos proponent either. Just like let the branches go where they go. But yeah, I don't know. I think taking his temp pad would be a pretty terrible decision, especially because they're carrying.
I yeah.
Taking
I
his temp pad?
Yeah, the little wrist thing that he offered. He
Yeah.
offered his little
yeah.
wrist. Yeah.
I I would be at least up for a conversation. I think that our Loki, Tom Hiddleston's Loki, has a point in like let's just like stop and think before we like
Yeah.
kill and let everything go to chaos. Um, but in the end, I would probably come down on Sylvie's side and say like let it go to chaos. Um, just like the TVA is so authoritarian and there's so much like prune first, ask questions later. If there was no way to like revamp that or, cut back on that or something, I don't know. It just seems like the glimpses that we've gotten of the TVA in the second half of Loki are so authoritarian. It's like it's too much for me. Um, but I wouldn't be opposed to like stopping and having a conversation, which I think their fight is weirdly about. Like I get Loki's like, you know, this is a weighty decision. We probably shouldn't make it in 10 seconds. And, just, pointing into the sword goes in the other guy. Like, we should probably think about it.
Yeah. I don't know what like it becomes one of those things you dwell on it too long and you find no new answers, you know.
Maybe, but at least you can like have maybe some peace of mind about like, you know, we at least thought
It
about
was
it.
well considered. Yeah.
You're right. We talked about it and maybe we didn't get anywhere new, but we at least like felt solid in that we heard each other out and thought like,
Mm.
this is our points of view and if we
Well,
still disagree, then obviously something needed to happen, but at least we talked about it.
the
So I guess
go ahead.
yeah. So I guess the question is, did does Sylvie believe he who remains that like chaos is on the way and that there's going to be an epic battle that they have to fight, or does she just not really care and she's just out to wrap up her own storyline? Because I think for season 2 there's some really practical questions of if all these other multi-universes are ready for a fight and now this is their chance and they're mobilizing as we clearly see where Loki lands, like no one in the sacred timeline knows that this is a thing except her because Loki's no longer there. So like how are they going to mobilize a defense? Like what kind of
Mm,
chaos is going to ensue as a result? Like so I think it matters if she believes that he's like telling the truth and that there's going to be just
right.
this epic fight that's going to come when his other versions arrive. So that's the question that was going through my head when we wrapped up the last episode today.
Yeah.
And I mean, if they're all ready for a fight and they're coming, like how are they held at bay?
Right.
Clearly wasn't the TVA, right? Or was it that literally like the TVA going to previous points in time to stop things before they started? But
Right.
again, when you can time travel, all points in time exist all times. And so like I just don't I don't know. You know,
Yeah, hard to
I
know.
mean,
Yeah,
to me it's
it's not a well-conceived, like, technology.
yeah, we're not not conveyed anyways to
Yeah,
us.
right.
Um, I would have to choose uh Sylvie. I would have to go that route, but then the knowledge you're given or is that we'll just be back here. I'll see you soon because
Right.
it will time will end up in the same place anyways. The
Right.
31st
Or did he,
century is happening. He is still being born and it's still happening. And so he'll find a way to connect the multiverses and he'll win the war and the whole thing and we'll be back to where
Like,
we're at.
starts over again, yep.
Yeah.
or did he also mean that he meant his other versions, that they'll see his other
Yeah.
versions?
I thought it was a kind of double meaning there. Yeah. Mhm.
Yeah.
Mhm.
All right. Any other thoughts on Loki? Closing comments or like overall opinions or something?
My
Um
brain hurts.
um, so I don't have any other closing comments, but I'm interested to know, like, for you guys, like, ranking of the Marvel shows so far,
Hmm.
of the
What do you
3
think,
we've
Chris?
gotten.
Well, I can't put this one at the top yet. I've enjoyed it quite a bit, but I just like there's too many unanswered questions and it's really obscure. I really enjoyed um uh the one that followed Vision and sorry, I'm
WandaVision?
forgetting the title. WandaVision, right.
WandaVision, yep.
I really enjoyed that. I really liked the structure. I really enjoyed the backstory of that character. I always had lots of questions about that character in the Marvel movies, and so I wanted to know more about that. I would still keep that one at the top for me. I honestly I can't really place Loki above or below um, uh,
Falcon and Winter
the
Soldier.
Falcon and Winter Soldier, just because I just have a hard time knowing where this one was going to go. I will say, I guess, to kind of like offer content that's worth anyone's time. I felt like um, episode 5 and 6 lowered Loki in my rankings. I will say that.
Mm, m'kay.
Okay. I think I would put obviously WandaVision and Falcon Winter Soldier are presumably done.
Right.
Hmm.
And Loki is not. So this is like basically a season versus those series. But
Hmm.
as it currently stands, um, I would put Loki as number one.
Okay.
Nice.
Um,
Alright.
just for the improvement in visual quality, for the
Mhm.
questions asked, for the debate of between free will
Mhm.
or destiny, for for playing with time that I like, and for the like emotional moments between our Lokis. Um, if yeah, and then I would put second was WandaVision.
Mhm.
It goes in the second because I thought it was a slower start that I was
Mhm.
less interested in, and it kind of ramped up, and then it also let me down with Quicksilver.
Yes.
It dropped some things that like were leading a person to a conclusion that was the wrong one potentially.
Mhm.
And then Falcon Winter Soldier, I thought fell in so many places. I thought
Mhm.
as we talked about, their most interesting characters were not the central characters; they were side characters. Um, I thought they had tonal problems. It had pacing problems.
Mhm.
it felt forced with like trying to get Falcon and Bucky together and like why they were involved and what their place was in the order. It, there wasn't much good other than like there was we did talk some philosophy that was brought up in there as well. There was a few like kind of fun moments with I forget some of their names now or whatever, but and they try to bring a political relevancy that I didn't need either. So it's kind of how I'd rate them right now. Keeping it separate from like the greater Marvel universe.
Right,
Like I might
absolutely.
change my ranking if I am considering the impact. Like if I had to consider Loki and what they're doing to the character of Loki, that maybe kind of bothers me, and like maybe that's an
Right.
issue. But as a show itself, kind of deprived of, removed from. Yeah.
Yeah.
How about
And
you?
I think,
Oh.
yeah. Go ahead, Danny.
So yeah, I was just gonna say for me, WandaVision, just because is number one for me, just because I was very excited. I agree, the start was slow, but I felt like once even I got into like the second and third episodes, I was very excited about where the show was going. I thought it was paced well. I never felt things were uneven. I loved the supporting cast. And I didn't feel they overtook the main characters. I felt like Wanda and Vision were always like doing something interesting and important for their character development, and not being buried by the side characters like the way I felt like Falcon and Winter Soldier were. And I was really excited, as long as we're in spoiler land, to see White Vision and to see if there's anything there that they're gonna do with that. Like it really excited me. I love Paul Bettany and I loved his version of Vision. Glad I could get that out without stumbling. So I'm excited to see if that takes us anywhere, Disney, standalone series or in the regular MCU movies. I would definitely rank for me Loki second. I really liked the content of the show. I loved the questions that they asked. I loved the risks that they took, playing with time, playing with multiverse, playing with, multiple Lokis and kind of trying to break our brains that way. And then Falcon and Winter Soldier is last. I just felt like there was so much promise with that show that it never lived up to. There was an interesting story to tell about how Sam became Captain America. Even if I didn't love that he did, I still think you could have told that story in a compelling and interesting way. And there were flashes, there were moments of greatness, and that was it. The show just never lived up to its hype. So that's my ranking.
And I think that just for viewers, I think Loki will, no matter where it goes. I don't think it matters what season 2 brings. I think we're ultimately going to have to ask the kind of one overarching question with Marvel Universe shows, and that's there's going to be two different groups of people. Like one group is going to say, well, they tackled this Herculean task of discussing like multiverse universe, so we need to give them credit for like trying to tackle that. And then the other camp of people are going to say, well, like that's an incredibly difficult thing to kind of portray in a TV series, so you probably should have just left it to the comics where it began. And I think that you're gonna have those two groups, like, and I just don't know. I really enjoyed the origins of the TVA and that dynamic. I don't know. I'm struggling. Like, I'm a pretty dedicated Marvel fan, at least for the last. I mean, not outside of the comics, but I just have a hard time. Boy, if I didn't know anything about Marvel, like Loki wouldn't, so far anyways, be the show that really got me interested, because it's confusing. It's genuinely confusing. So I have high hopes for season 2. I just I think it's going to be hard to explain this time aspect better.
Well, to be fair, none of these TV series are entry points. I think, in my
Yeah,
opinion,
Sure.
it would be a mistake for
that's
anybody
true.
to try and enter the Marvel universe through any of these TV series.
It is a
Sure, that-
strength to like that Marvel is willing to make things that don't necessarily have to be fully understood. You
Mhm.
know,
Mhm.
like normally the thought is it needs to be watchable and fully appreciated by a complete newcomer. And
Mhm.
I think
Mhm.
Marvel traditionally here has been okay with that. Not necessarily, you still can enjoy it, but there's so much you're not getting if you don't see the
Mhm.
preceding content.
Yes.
And
At
I'm
least
okay
at
with that, I
least
guess.
some of the preceding content. Like
Yeah.
there's nothing to say that you need to see all of it, but you would never watch any of these TV series solo and know anything that was happening.
Yep. I mean, this show, to your point, Chris, is I think probably going to end up in the same trap that is really easy for a writer to do. I do it in D and
Mhm.
D all the time. It's really fun and easy to offer up tantalizing questions
Mm.
before you know the answer, and then having to make that pay off, find that
Mhm.
answer in your process. Yeah, Alan says JJ Abrams. Yep, absolutely.
Mm.
Is
Mhm.
it's jump in, drop a bomb, walk away, let someone else try to explain it.
Right. Right.
No, it doesn't
It's a huge task. I guess that's ultimately what I'm trying to kind of suggest as my opinion here is that like to make season 2 a success, like you don't
Yep,
get any of the intrigue of introducing the TVA and introducing like
right.
how this works and the
Right.
technology and the characters.
Yep.
It's like that's all old news. We're all coming into season 2 saying we want some freaking answers. Like
Yeah.
Yep.
what's going on and what's happening and how is there going to be resolution and
Yeah, there's
I'm
there's nothing to
it's
say
tough.
that my ranking of Loki wouldn't change if season 2 was just like shit. We
Yeah.
we we threw a
Yeah.
bomb in season 1 and don't know how to clean it up. Like
Yeah.
there's absolutely nothing to say that like I couldn't rank it lower than Falcon and Winter Soldier if season 2 is just like a hot mess.
Time will tell.
Yes,
Time will tell.
indeed. Yeah, we're getting a
All
season
right.
2, so we have to know.
Yeah.